Sotah Daf Yud Beis is again a long daf. Mostly I got it discussing Miriam, a little bit about her, a little bit about Kalev, who was her husband, and then going back to the sugya of Yetzias Mitzrayim and discussing Paro's strategy to try to get rid of the boys and to prevent the birth of Moshe Rabbeinu, and then Moshe Rabbeinu's birth in more Edland. So we begin the last three lines on Daf Yud Aleph. The Gemara says that Kalev is called Ben Chetzon in a pasuk in Divrei Hayamim, and it says that he gave birth to Azuva, the woman, and Yerios. And it says, and these are her sons, Yesher and Shovav and Ardon. So Gemara asks, why is it called Ben Chetzon? Kalev was the son of Yefuna. So Gemara answers, he was Ben Chetzon, he was called Ben Yefuna because from the word Pina, that he turned himself away from the advice, from the plot of the Meraglim, and he separated himself from them. So then we're asked, but he was called Ben Kenaz because it says that Kalev was the brother of Osniel. It says, Vayilukid Osniel Ben Kenaz Achi Kalev, and Osniel was the son of Kenaz. So my answer is they were brothers from the mother. Osniel was the son of Kenaz, but Kalev was shared a mother with him. They did not have the same father. Kalev's father was not Kenaz, and that's why Kalev is called in Sefer Yeshua, he's called Haknizi, Kalev ben Yefuna Haknizi, it says, because he's from the family of Kenaz, but not a son of Kenaz. Now, it says that he gave birth to Miriam, so the Gemara says that he gave birth to Azuva. The Gemara says Azuva refers to Miriam. And why is she called Azuva? Because everybody left her, because she was very sickly and ill in her younger years, and nobody wanted to marry her. So Gemara says that she was married. In the end, she married Kalev. So Gemara quotes Rav Yechanan, who says anybody who marries a woman l'shem shemayim, it's as if he gives birth to her, and that's why it's called that he was molded her. Now, why is she called Yerios? Further on, she was called Yerios in the same pasuk. So because she looked like Yerios, her face was like a curtain. It was pale and bland from the illness that she suffered from. Now, it refers to her Baneha, her sons, says the Gemara, Baneha, here should be read as Boneha, those who built her. And it's referring to Kalev. It's not referring to any sons. And they were called Yesher and Shovav and Ardon. So it all are references to Kalev Yesher because he was Yasher, he straightened himself out, he was very straight in his ways. Shovav, that he controlled, he captured his Yitzhahara, and Ardon, that he was Rada, that he ruled over his Yitzhahara. Some say because her face was similar to a verid, similar to a rose. The pasuk goes further and it says, La'ashchar avi Tekoa, shtei nashim, Chala v'Naara. Ashchar, the son of Tekoa, had two wives, Chala and Naara. So the Gemara says Ashchar again is Kalev. Why was it called Kalev? Because from the word shachar, black, that he fasted in order to be saved from the raglam in his face. Your face turns black from a lot of fasting. Avi, why is it called Avi? Because he became like a father to Miriam. He took care of her in her sickness. Tekoa, that he stuck, from the word taka, is libo, his heart, to Aviv Shabashmaim Takach Baruch, who was stuck to Kodesh Baruch very firmly. Now it says that he had two wives, that Miriam was as if she was two separate women. She was Chala and Naara. Chala was when she was sick, and Naara was when she was healthy. She has young and healthful. In the beginning she was Chala, and then later she was Naara. Now it says that the children of Chala were Tzaras, V'Tzara, and Esnan. So Tzaras, why is she called Tzaras? Because everyone else became like a tzara to her. Everyone else became almost the status of a co-wife to her because of her beauty. Tzahar, that from the word shine, that her face shone like the afternoon, like Tzaharayim. And Esnan, which is the money that somebody gives to a prostitute, a zona, meaning to say that anybody who saw her would go and almost pay his own wife for tashmish because he was so desirous of it. Okay, now the Gemara returns to Paro's strategy to get rid of the boys in order to prevent the birth of Moshe Shel Yisrael, which is Moshe Rabbeinu. So the Gemara says, as the pasuk says, Paro commanded all of his people to throw the babies into the water. So the Gemara says, why does it say Amo? So Rav Yosef Bar Chanina says he made a decree even on his own people, even the boys of the Mitzrayim had to be thrown into the water. So Rav Yosef Bar Chanina, there were three stages to this Gzeira. First, he told the midwives to kill the boys. And then he said that all the boys should be thrown into the water, not at the time of the birth necessarily, but everybody must throw the boys into the water. But he didn't really have enforcement on it. And then he made a decree even on his own nation that all uh, children, all the boys from both Egyptian and Jewish families have to be put into the water. The Mepharshim explain that he had received word from his stargazers that the savior of Kaisel was born, but it was not clear if he was a Mitzri or if he was a Yisrael, and therefore he said to kill them all. Next, the pasuk says, "Vayelech Levi, Amram, who was the man who went out from the house of Levi." So where did he go? So it says, "Yehuda bar Zvina, he went in the advice of his daughter, who is Miriam." So the verse that says Amram was the Gadol Hadar, was the leader of the generation when he saw what Pari the wicked had planned, and he said that all the boys have to be thrown into the water. He said, "What are we going to work for nothing? We're going to raise children. We're going to give birth to children for nothing." Instead, he went and he divorced his wife. So everybody followed suit. Everybody divorced their wives as well. So his daughter said to him, "Father, your decree is worse than that of Pari." Because Pari, in three ways. Because Pari only made a decree to prevent the life of the males, but your decree that no one should be married ends up preventing the lives of the males and the females. Pari's decree was only in this world, because if they're going to die, at least they'll have Olam Haba, but by you preventing them from being born, they won't have Olam Hazeh or Olam Haba. And Pari, who's a Rasha, it's possible that his decree will be fulfilled, or possible that people won't keep his decree. But you as a tzaddik, if you make this decree, people are going to keep it for sure, and therefore your decree is certainly going to last. So therefore, you're worse than him in three ways. As it says, Tigzar Omer Vayokam Loch, show that the words of tzaddikim are kept. So he heard this, he stood up, Ahmad, and he remarried his wife. And everybody therefore went and remarried their own wives. So the Gemara asks, why does it say Vayikach Ishmi Mibas Levi? Vayikach is in a word that he took, which implies the first marriage. It should say Vayachzor, that he remarried her. So Gemara says, or Bar Zvina says, that he made like a first marriage. He sat her in a special chair that women who are being married for the first time sit on. And Aaron and Miriam danced before her. And the Malach Yesharis, the angels themselves, said, "The mother of the children is very joyful." Okay, then it says this Bas Levi. Gemara asks, why she called a Bas? Why she called a daughter of Levi? She was 130 years old, and is she so called a daughter? How do you know she was 130 years old? Reb Chama Bar Chanina says that Yocheved is the one, we're referring here to Yocheved, of course. She was conceived on the way to Mitzrayim when Yaakov and his family were on the way traveling from Canaan to Mitzrayim, and she was born between the walls, between the outer wall and the inner wall. And that's why it lists that there were 69 people that came down to Mitzrayim, but there were 70 who arrived in Mitzrayim. Like it says, she was born to Levi in Mitzrayim, but she was not conceived in Mitzrayim. So the question therefore is, if she's 130 years old, because they've been in Mitzrayim already for 130 years, why is she called a girl? So Rabbi Yehuda answers, because she became young, she looked young, and her skin and her face and her body returned to youthfulness. And it says, V'tara Isha v'teilad bein, she became pregnant and she gave birth to a son. So Gemara asks, why are we saying now that she gave birth to a son? She was pregnant already for 3 months before. Before this happened, she was pregnant 3 months previously, as we're going to see soon. So the Gemara says, Yehuda bar Zvina, this is to link her conception of him to her birth of him. Just like the conception was painless, the birth was painless as well. From here we see that righteous women did not have the suffering of the decree that was placed upon Chava, that she should give birth with agony. Okay, then the pasuk says, "Vatera Isaac Taifu." She saw that he was good. So Rabbi Meir says in a brisa, "Toiv." What does that mean? He was good. So Toiv is his name. Rabbi Yehuda says Toivya is his name. Rabbi Chemia says he was fitting for Nevios. Acherim, others say that he was born with a bris milah, and the Chachamim say that in the time that he was born, the entire house was filled with light. As it says here, Vatera Isaac Toiv, and she saw him that he was good, and it says in Ma'aseh Bereshis, Vayara Elikim Esa Or Ki Toiv, Hashem saw the light that it was good. So Toiv is a reference to light which filled the house. Okay, next the pasuk says, she hid him for 3 months. Why for 3 months? Because the Mitzvah were not expecting him to be born for 3 months, because they didn't know that she was pregnant already 3 months before the marriage. They counted at the time of the marriage, but she was pregnant from the first round, and therefore she was 3 months ahead of schedule. Afterwards, it says, "Well, she couldn't hide him anymore." So Gemara says, "Why not? Let her keep hiding him." So Gemara says, "Because the mitzvah, whenever they suspected a child, would bring their own children, and when they would cry, the nature of a child is when he hears crying, he cries as well, and therefore that was the way to get them to reveal where the Jewish children were." Like it says, we were caught by the foxes, the little foxes. They're the ones who caused the entrapment, the enslavement of these kids. Next it says, she took for him a basket of wicker. Why did she use goyme? Why did she use wicker? It says of Elazar, she wanted to use a cheap material, the cheapest one that would work, obviously without compromising on the health and safety of her child. She tried to use a cheap one as opposed to wood, because their property is dear to them more than their bodies themselves. And what's the reason for that? Because they don't steal anything, and therefore whatever they get is hard to come by. Rishon Bar Nachmani says the reason that they used goyme, the reason she used wicker, is because it's something soft, and therefore it could withstand impact with something soft and something hard. It's not going to smash. Next, she coated it with pitch and tar, tachmar b'chemer v'zefes. So the Brisa says it was chemer on the inside, zefes on the outside, because zefes is a bad smell, and in order that the tzaddik should not have to smell the bad smell. Next, it says that she placed him in the suf, in the reeds. So Rabbi Elazar says that means that she placed him in the Yamsuf. Shmuel Bar Nachmani says it means that she placed him in a swamp, like it says Kinei Suf Kamalu. The Gemara now continues and quotes how Bas Paroi came to find Moshe floating in the basket in the river. So it says she came to wash in the water. It says what did she want to wash? She wanted to wash off the avodah zarah of her father's house, like it says in Merachatz Hashem es tzas ben Tzion the Goymer and the rest of the pasuk. So you see that washing could refer to washing off avodah zarah. Next it says v'naraseh holchos, and her servants, her maids, were walking. So what's the significance in her maids walking? It says Rav Yechanan, walking means walking towards the death, because like it says, walking means towards death. And what does that mean? So the Gemara is about to say. Next it says that she saw the basket floating with teres hateva, she saw it in the reeds. Once they saw that she wanted to save Moshe, so the servants said to her, Our Lady, the custom of the world is that if a king of flesh and blood makes a decree, so the entire world has to keep it. If they don't keep it, at least his sons and his daughters, or the members of his house, should keep it. And you want to go and you want to break your father's decree. Your father decreed that everyone should be thrown in the water and they should be killed in the water. How could you go and save from one of the babies in the water? So at that point, Gavriel, the Malach, came and struck them all, and they all fell to the ground, and that was why it says that they were walking towards their death. Next it says, Vatishachas Amasa, she sent her Amasa. What's an Amasa? Vatikocha, and she took it. So what's an Amasa? One says it means her hand, one says it means her servant. The word Amal can mean an arm, or it can mean a servant. So the one who says that it's her hand, because it says Amasa is a word which means an arm. And the one who says that it's a servant, because the more common expression would be to say Yada. Why does it say Amasa? And therefore it must mean her servant. So the Gemara asks, obviously, how does there a servant? Gabriel came and killed them all. So the Gemara says, no, he must have left one for her, because a princess cannot be alone. That's not covered, and therefore he left one alive. Now, according to the one who says it was her hand, why does that taka not say hand? So it says this is to tell you that her Amma became enlarged, it lengthened, and it became much longer than it was before. Just like we find by the scepter of Achashverosh, it lengthened to reach Esther, and over there the Medrash says that lengthened just like Basparai's Amma lengthened. So that's the same thing. Where else do you find something that lengthened? So the teeth of Arasha lengthened, and that helped save Klai. So that's referring to the teeth of Og that got stuck in the mountain when he was holding it over his head. And that's the Pasuk Shini Rishayim Shibarta, that he saved Klai Yisrael by breaking the teeth of the wicked. It says Rish Lakish don't say Shibarta, but Shri Bavta, which he made it longer. Okay, going further in the story, she opened up the basket and she saw the child. So why does it say Vater Ehu and she saw him, the child? It should say Vatere. The grammar is wrong here. It says she saw Shechina with him. She saw the child and also she saw him. That is, she saw the Shechina. It says V'hinei nara bocha, and she heard a boy crying, and behold, there was a boy crying. So first it calls him a yeled, a baby, and then it calls him an ar. Why the change in the terminology? So the Gemara's first shot is to say that he was a baby, but he cried with the sound of a older child. That's Rabbi Huda. So Rabbi Nechemia said, how could that be? That means you're making Moshe Rabbeinu to a balmum, into someone who has a blemish. Deep voice, a voice that's too deep for one's age, is a blemish. And Moshe's a Levi. Yes, his voice is important. So it must mean something else. Says Rabbi Nechemia, it means that there was a chupas neurim, there was a chuppah over him. And that's because his mother said, maybe I won't be able to see him go down to the chuppah. I'll never be able to marry him off if I'm putting him here in the basket. I don't know what's going to happen to him. And therefore she decided to put him in a chuppah right then and there. The Psukim continues, says, V'tachma Olav, and she had mercy upon him. V'temer miyaldi hevrim zeh. This is from the children of the Jews. So, Mino Yalda. How did she know that? Says Riesi, Rabbi Chanina, because she saw that he had a bris milah. Zeh. What does zeh mean? Miyaldi hevrim zeh. What's the this? So here the Gemara says a few things. Rabbi Chanina says this is to teach that she had a nevuah that she was not aware of. She said that this one is going to fall and someone else is not going to fall. The zeh, meaning this one, this is the one that will fall. Like Rabbi Loza said, what is the meaning of v'chiyemru aleichem dirshos el ha'evis v'el ha'yadainim ha'masaftzufim v'hamahagim tzofim yodim matzofim, that the stargazers had gotten it wrong. And that was the zeh, because the stargazers, they say things, they don't know what they're seeing, and they speak words and they don't know what they're talking about. Because what happened? They saw that the Savior of Yisrael was going to be born and that he was going to be punished in water. So therefore they told this to the king, and the king made the gzeira that they should all be thrown in the water. And that way he figured he was going to bring about the punishment of Mashiach Yisrael. However, once Moshe was put in the water, so they said, okay, so it's happened. So it's already come to fruition, you don't have to worry anymore. And they had completely missed the boat, because they were, what was actually being referred to was the Mei Meriva. That is the time when he hit the rock, and the water that came out of the rock, that is what caused him to be punished, not to be allowed to enter Eretz Yisrael. That is what was being referred to in the context there, that he was going to have trouble with water. Now, this is what Rabbi Chama bar Chanina said. What does it mean? Hema Mei Meriva Asher Rabu. That this is the water that Paro's stargazers had been seeing and had made a mistake upon. And that's what Moshe said later when he said, Sheshmeis Elef Ragli. He said that there are 600,000 people here, and Asher Anechi Bikirbe Vata Marta Basar Ten Lahem. So Asher Anechi Bikirbe, what he's saying here is that they were all saved because of me, because the decree to throw the babies into the water stopped at that moment. It stopped when the stargazers had said, okay, it's already happened, you can stop the decree because the Savior of Yisrael has already been put into the water. It says Rabbi Chanina bar Papa, a different shot in Zeh. Zeh refers to the day. That was the day, was the 21st day of the month of Nisan. This person, this Moshe, who is going to say Shira on the Yam Suf in 80 years from now, which was also the 21st day of Nisan, on this day he should be destroyed. How could that be? And therefore you have to save him. And that's B'yam Zeh. Rabbi Achab bar Chanina said that it was not the 21st day of Nisan, it was the 6th day of Sivan, the day of Shavuos. And the Malach Shara said before Kodesh Baruch Hu, Rabban Shalom, the one who is in the future going to accept the Torah on Har Sinai on this day, should he be stricken on this day, and therefore he has to be saved. So the Gemara asks, hold on a second, so you tell me it's a machlokes if this incident with Moshe in the river happened on the 6th day of Sivan or the 21st day of Nisan. However, we know that Moshe Rabbeinu was born on the 7th day of Adar, and we know that he was 3 months old at this time. So that makes perfect sense if it was the 6th day of Sivan, because from the 7th day of Adar to the 6th day of Sivan is 3 months. However, it's 21st day of Nisan, you're just under a month short. So how does it work out? So the Gemara answers that it was a leap year, and therefore you had Moshe Rabbeinu was born in Adar Aleph, so you had most of Adar Rishon, you had all of Adar Sheni, and most of Nisan, and therefore you counted as 3 full months, and that is the answer to how she wasn't really 3 months old, 3 complete months, but it was the majority of 3 months. Okay, the Gemara speaks further. Vatomar achosa el bas Parai. So Miriam said to Parai's daughter, should I go and call a nursing woman for you from the Jews? So why did she say from the Ivrius? So that's to show that they had already given up having Moshe nursed from an Egyptian, because they had already brought him to all the Egyptian women already, and he would not drink from any of them. And the reason is because he was supposed to speak with the Shekhinah, a mouth that is in the future going to speak with the Shekhinah. It cannot be that he should nurse from something Tameh. And that's what it says, as me Yeredeya. Who is the one who should show wisdom? Lemi Yavin Shambua. The Gemuli Michalav, to the one who is removed from the milk, Uatike Mishadayim, the one who is taken away from the breast. So Baspari said to her, Lechi, should go, says Rav Elazar. So you see from here that she went with Zrizas, Ka'alma. It says Vatele Ka'alma, and the young girl went. She went with the Mida of a young girl, the trait of running quickly with alacrity. Mishal Bar Nachmani says the young girl, Ha'alma, she's called Ha'alma, Shehalima, because she hid her words. She didn't answer truthfully. She didn't reveal that she was his sister, and she didn't reveal that she was going to call his mother of all. Then it says, so Pari said to Moshe's mother, said to Yocheved, take this child. It says in she was speaking in words of prophecy, and she was not even aware of what she was saying. Hey lichi, hey shalichi. She was saying, this is yours. She didn't even realize that's what she was saying. She said, I'm going to give you your salary. Says it's not enough for tzaddikim that they get returned what they have lost, but you even give them a payment for what they lost, so they get it back plus payment for it. Then it says later, after the Kriyas Yamsuf, it says Vatikach Miriam Hanavia Achos Aharon. She's called Miriam, the prophetess, is called the sister of Aaron. What is she called? Achos Aharon v'lo Achos Moshe. She's not Moshe's sister. It says Rav Amram Amarav in the name of Rav Nachman, and Rav Amram Amarav, and some say it was Rav Nachman in the name of Rav. You see that she said Nevuah when she was only Aaron's sister, and she said, in the future my mother is going to give birth to the Savior of Klal Yisrael. That is, when she was only the sister of Aaron, she was already a Neviah. When Moshe was born, the entire house was filled with light. Her father stood up and kissed her on the forehead and said, my daughter, your prophecy has come true. But then when they threw him into the water, so he tapped her or slapped her on her head, and she said, my daughter, what happened to your prophecy? And that's why it says, she stood from a distance to see what was going to happen. You wanted to know what was going to happen with the prophecy that she had made, that he was going to survive and end up saving